Alrighty, welcome to the complete guide on everything you need to know about in-game match play mechanics, specifically in the Inazuma 11 Victory Road beta. If there is anything that I do miss in this video, please feel free to drop it in the comments and help people out. There will inevitably be things that I will miss, but I shall try to be as thorough as possible. Firstly, I do want to clear up the stuff that I definitely don't know. So the first of which is that I have no idea if being a captain provides any benefit to the player. I don't think it does. I think it's just a nice touch so that you can see your favorite player walk out as the captain in like the tunnel intros. Secondly, I can't currently understand why there is any benefit or purpose to the coaches being able to be leveled, as their parameters don't currently seem to contribute to anything, and the only current benefit of a coach is their passives, which can be unlocked and improved from leveling them up with spirits without improving overall levels at all. Also, coaches have elements as well, and I have no idea why they do currently, as I'm not sure what benefit that would have. Coaches should really complement the playstyle that you want to go for. So for example, if you're hyper offensive, you want to go for Coach Hillman, because with his passive fully unlocked, the first half, you get 25% additional attack power for your team. So hyper defensive, you want to go for Percival Travis. He gives you 25% defensive stats for the second half of any battle. And if you want to go tactics focused, go for Aquilina Schiller. She gives you 25% cooldown speed on your Hisatsu tactics. So following on from tactics, let's first talk about the different ones in the game. So you have 3 tactics and 1 super tactic. There are currently 9 tactics in the beta. 2 of these are primarily defense focused, Diamond Defense and Flame Fortress. Depending on the type of team that you're planning on running, some of these will be essential, such as Mount Fuji for a tension team, Bullhorns for a breach team, Bond Protocol for a bond team, Claymore for a hyper offensive foul rate reduction team, for you toxic players out there that probably just like pressing B near the goal. I hate you guys. The remainder are Sideline Spears, Waxing Moon, and 3-pronged attack. These are all pretty universal and can be used in every situation / team, as they will aid winning, focus, and scramble and rough battles. Now, when it comes to special tactics, these have special specific shapes known as geoglyphs, and within these shapes you gain additional effects separate from the overall effect. Now, we've talked about special tactics, so let's move on to super tactics. Super tactics always show up as the rightmost option when you bring up the tactics tab. Super tactics are randomly generated for each player separately each game, and as of the beta, there are 6 super tactics in total. The first is Super Barrier, which gives you a save rate of 200% and defensive stat of 100%. For 30 seconds. Then next there's Lucky Fever, which will give you an increased drop rate of 100%. Then you have Sweeping Win. For 30 seconds you have a 100% chance of winning Focus and Scramble. Then there's Explosion. For 30 seconds your breach rate is increased by 200% and attack by 50%. Then you have Power Direct. For 30 seconds you increase the direct shot attack by 100% once only. And then you have Invincible Keeper. For 10 seconds the goalkeeper can stop any shot. Now, in my personal opinion, in order of usefulness, before the story mode update, Invincible Keeper is number 1 because the ability for 10 seconds to stop any shot is kind of busted. This means even if you miss out and you don't pass the ball effectively and you accidentally pass it to your opponents and they shoot again, if that's still within the 10 seconds, you can stop it. It's kind of busted. Then there's Sweeping Win, because the ability to win 100% of your focus and scramble battles for 30 seconds means that you can basically guaranteed get yourself a full tension bar just by running through the opponents. Then third is Super Barrier, because obviously it just massively increases your defensive and your save rate stats. Power Direct, 30 seconds it increases your direct shot attack. It's just pretty good for your offensive capabilities. Explosion, if you're running a breach team, is pretty great. And then at the very bottom, we've got Lucky Fever, Lucky Fever might be slightly better after the story mode update, but I doubt it's going to change positions very much. Now, all of these tactics have a cooldown, and if used right away in the first half, even without Coach Schiller, you can use them twice per game if you're really on it and making sure you're keeping an eye on the cooldown timers. Now, next I'm going to talk about the miscellaneous aspects of gameplay within a match. So, passive skills. These are only activated for players who are on the pitch, so make sure that you're aware of what passives each player has, so that when you substitute as well, you can make calculated changes to your team and you know exactly how it's going to affect your team. So for the players who are directly on the pitch, their passive skills are activated. So you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of which passives each player has, as well as the passives your substitutes have, so you can make calculated changes, not just for type matchups, but also changes to your team dynamic. With regards to substitutions, they can have 3 benefits. Substitutions increase morale. Now, this morale increase means that the attack and defensive stats of the substituted player will increase by 15%, and players in the same position as that substitute will gain 5% increase in their attack and defense also. So, for context, if you subbed in Tsurugi or Victor Blade, and you subbed him in for one of your strikers, then any other strikers that you had on the pitch will gain a 5% increase, and Victor Blade will gain a 15% increase to his attack and defensive stats. Then, depending on the type of coach you have, you get additional bonuses whenever you make a substitution. So on top of that 15% increase to attack and defensive stats, so if you have Coach Hillman, you get 8% attack for 15 seconds after your substitution. If you have Percival, then you get 8% defense for 15 seconds after your substitution. And if you have Coach Schiller, you get a bit of a balance of both. So you'll get 3% attack and 3% defense for 15 seconds. Elemental affinities also exist in the game. For those of you unaware, wind is good against mountain, mountain is good against fire, fire is good against forest, and forest is good against wind. We'll touch on where elemental affinities factor on in a little bit. So next, let's talk about bond, power, and tension. In any given game, you should be able to see your bond and tension bar in the top left of your screen. Every time you successfully connect a pass, you increase your bond meter. The maximum bond power you can reach is 30%, which means an additional 30% to shot attack stat when a shot is made. Your tension bar doesn't currently have a percentage next to it, but you gain tension based on winning mini battles and from certain passive effects your players may have. You can also lose some tension based on certain passives. You do not gain tension from rough charges and blocks. If your tension bar is full, it allows you to use 3 Hisatsus consecutively. As of the first version of the beta, breach and save do not trigger below 30% tension. So in other words, if you want to have a chance of triggering either of those mechanics, you always want to have about 30% tension before shooting or saving. Speaking of breach and save mechanics, there is currently no save increasing passives in the game, just breach passives. Next, let's talk about special moves / Hisatsus. All special moves require tension. They all go on cooldown after use, so keeping a track of cooldowns for each player in your head is important. There are shot, dribble, block, and catch type Hisatsus or special moves, and they all work pretty similarly. Your max level stats of your player, equipment, and passives factor into your base attack and defensive stats. You then get multipliers or additives on those base stats based on special tactics used and special moves used. So the stronger the special move being used, the higher the additive value will be. Special moves will increase your base stat portion. If you use a stronger special move, this will further increase your base stats. If the special move you use matches your player's affinity, you'll likely get an additional boost. If your special move is effective against the opponent's elemental affinity, you'll get an additional boost on top of that. And then obviously, any special tactics you use can situationally increase those bonuses even more. Now, if we talk about offense, we're going to focus on everything related to forwards, strikers, shooting, etc. So as of the first version of the beta, you have the ability in some instances when you're in front of the goal and the zone hasn't been triggered, you can press B or pass the ball into the net without any Hisatsus or even the ability for the keeper to do anything about it. This is a pretty cheesy strategy. I'm not sure if it's actually intended or not. I think we'll find out after the story mode update comes. Now, doing this isn't 100% guaranteed, and it's a pretty toxic strategy, but it's high risk, high reward, so you are also in some instances able to score into an open net if the keeper is far enough away from the net. You can, in similar instances, dash or run into the net with the ball to score. If we're playing how the game is intended, however, your primary focus will be shooting using Hisatsus. As mentioned before, the number of shoot Hisatsus you can do is based on your tension amount. At max tension, you can use 3 special moves. You can actually chain shoot 3 special moves and then pass it to a player who can have a final direct shot with a normal shot. For a player that has been passed the ball or is the final part of a chain shoot, if they aim and confirm their target spot on the goal before the ball reaches them, then they get a bonus via direct shot bonus. It's always smart to try and make the last player shooting the final shot to be a player with type advantage versus the goalkeeper, as this helps trigger a type advantage bonus versus the keeper. It is in fact possible to slide tackle the keeper if they're running with the ball at their feet. Next, let's talk about defense in relation to keepers. So let's dive in to the opposite end of the pitch with the keepers. So keepers have their own separate bar, different to the team's tension bar, but there is some connectivity between them. The KP meter is basically a health bar for the keeper, like in Pokemon. Once this bar is depleted, a goal is scored. If the keeper saves a shot with no Hisatsu, then the bar goes down by the difference between the attack of the shot taken and the defensive value of the keeper. However, if you use a save Hisatsu, a portion of your KP bar is refunded back to you if you successfully save the shot. The larger the difference in KP power and shot attack, the more KP seems to be refunded as well. The stronger the save Hisatsu, the larger the KP stat you have when saving. You can only use save Hisatsus if you have enough tension, so that's the link between the KP bar and the tension bar. Also, there is a fatigue metric for consecutive saves that stays permanently throughout the match, so you'll see it as the teardrops under the KP indicator. The maximum amount of fatigue that you can have is 5, and so this is representative of how many shots they've taken, whether this is saved or scored against them. So your goal really should be to try and rack that up as quickly as possible. So in simple terms, the more fatigue you have, the less additional KP power you get when using a save Hisatsu. Save Hisatsus have cooldowns just like other Hisatsus. You can swap keepers to reinstill a new KP bar. If you're unable to pass out effectively to your defenders, you can dash with your keeper. Okay, so let's slide into the middle of the pitch. And here, we'll start with midfielders. We have 4 main scenarios midfielders will find themselves in. The first of which is focus battles, second, scramble battles. The third is focus battles with low tension, which triggers rough attacks and rough blocks. And then the fourth is standard dribbling. So when it comes to focus battles, I think we have to look at it in one of 2 ways. If your connection or theirs is terrible, it's a goddamn roulette. 50-50 chance of you winning any mini battle. If the connection is stable, then your stats don't really matter, and as long as you're not using special tactics, it's a little bit more of a mind game. If you're on offense, you can immediately choose a position to dash past them in, or you can shift left and right a few times before you commit to dashing in a set direction. Remember to keep an eye on your timer, and remember you can always pass out so as not to lose possession. The goal is to have your opponent not immediately in front of you when you pick a direction to dash. The stat values you see for each player are more indicative of who is likely to win a duel if you both use opposing special moves. Immediately after winning a focus battle, you glow yellow for a short period of time and are invincible. When it comes to scramble, I think your stats play into this massively along with your mechanical skill. With scramble, you want to move your left cursor to the option with the highest percentage and then confirm at the right time so you get the perfect animation. You might have a higher likelihood of winning scrambles by choosing to keep the ball, but I'll have to play a little bit more to find this out for certain. If you get into a focus battle where your opponent chooses to use a special move and you don't have one, then you get to use a rough attack. These have no cooldown and require no tension, but they have an increased foul rate. You can boost your rate of winning with rough block and rough attack using certain passives and tactics. The final bit is standard dribbling. Your players all have a stamina bar that refills when you're not sprinting. You can choose to sprint when you don't have the ball to catch up to a player ahead of you, or keep up with the player that is sprinting. If you sprint with the ball, you are invincible for the duration of your sprint stamina bar. You can use this to stun players and barrel them out the way. Be careful with this, as it does have a greatly increased foul rate unless you use passives and tactics to reduce this rate. When near a player who's dribbling normally past you, you can press A to slide tackle them, and you'll glow red when you do this. The higher your pressure stat, the higher the likelihood of a successful slide tackle. On the opposing side, players who are dribbling can avoid this slide tackle if they press A right as the slide tackle is incoming, and you'll perform a roulette. Now finally, let's talk about defense and defenders. This area is relatively simple. Defenders want to be placed in front of shots and passes as much as possible. If a defender is in the way of a pass, they will automatically gain possession. If they're in the way of a shot on target or a chain shoot, they will take some power off the shot as it hits them. If you have sufficient tension as the defensive player and your player is in front of the shot, they will be able to use a block special move. You can also position your players in front of your keeper in the path of a shot to block the oncoming shot by positioning castles. Castle walls are only effective if placed close enough to the path of the shot and close enough to the player that they can reach the designated castle position, and thus a castle wall is erected. The castle has two functions. It will either directly take off an equivalent amount of attack power from a shot, dependent on the value of the castle, or if it's more than the power of the attack, it will stop the shot and the defender will gain possession. If not, then the shot will be significantly weakened when reaching the keeper. And the other value of the castle is that if it's not directly blocking a shot, but the player is close enough to the keeper, the value of the castle will be added to the keeper's KP and defensive stat when saving a shot, as long as the castle isn't broken. Well, that about sums it up for my summary of gameplay and match mechanics, the first version of the Inazuma 11 Victory Road beta. If you guys did find it informative and enjoyable, please remember to drop a like, comment and subscribe. We are on the way to 1,000 subscribers before the end of 2024, so I'd appreciate it. Hope you guys did enjoy, and until the next one, deuces y'all.